Hello, and welcome to the COVID Fireside Chat brought to you by OCD Gamechangers. My name is Chrissy. I knew this was gonna happen.
Go backwards.
The truth is that Ethan really just has a big poster of OCD Gamechangers on his wall.
It's true.
My name is Chrissy Hodges. I am the founder and executive director of OCD Gamechangers. I'm the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder, and I'm a certified peer support specialist. I work with people worldwide to connect them to OCD therapists as well as provide support. And my guest is none other than Ethan Smith. Ethan, introduce yourself to all those people who may not know you.
My name is Ethan Smith. I'm an OCD advocate. I haven't written a book, and I have no licensure whatsoever. So thank you for having me. Let's talk about OCD.
I do want to say that before we were live, I just wanted to report that yesterday I did this big clean out of one of our closets, and I found this.
It's like gold.
And I have never been so excited.
Oh yeah.
To find a roll of toilet paper.
I'm super excited. We have to give can we give a shout out to Thomas and Jess, because Thomas is always following us around and we're always glad to have him. And Jessica Ann is here, so just wanted to say hey to Jess and Tom.
Hey y'all, thanks for being here.
Like Jack and Diane, Jess and Tom. Once was a girl named Jess and Tom. No?
Okay, so anyway, what we do here on the COVID Fireside Chats are basically,
Dana's here.
Hey, Dana.
Hey, Dana. What's up, girl? Okay, I have a question for you before we even. That's like washing clothes and finding $100. It's true. It's
probably worth $100 right now.
Yeah. Wait, can I ask you a question? Well, go ahead and announce, and then I'll ask you a question.
Okay. So just if you're joining us and you're wondering what this is, since we've kind of had a bit of, the home, whatever they're called, like the quarantine, people staying home, OCD Gamechangers has decided to bring people on just to talk about our experience with what's going on with COVID, not necessarily in a panel chat way, but just more so we can somehow normalize what we're all going through. This is unprecedented times. No one knows what to do and what to expect. And so at this point, just being able to kind of follow along what other people are feeling has been really helpful. And it's been super helpful for me. And I always appreciate all of your emails and reaching out and letting me know how much it's helped you. So that's what we're doing here. And now Ethan has a question.
No, I got to shout out to Katie Rothfelder because she said she's got to know me better. She's missing the shout outs. But Katie, I remember you from the other stream. So you are officially in. You just hadn't commented. So I didn't know you were here. So wait, what are we doing?
You said you wanted to ask me a question.
Yeah. So what's up, Mike? So I was just curious. You call this a fireside chat. I've yet to see any fire. Can you tell me how you came up with the name?
Okay, so I came up with the name. I have a story to tell, actually, this will be great. I was talking to the great Chris Tronson last night, and we were talking about fireside chats, and I was explaining to him what the fireside chats were, and I said, do you remember when FDR did fireside chats back in the Depression? And so I was like telling him how, FDR would come and address the nation and help people feel better about, just the situation where people feel out of control. And after I got done with my whole explanation, he was like, my first thought was, do you really think I'm that old bitch? And I was like, no. But I do remember studying in high school, just high school history, and remember learning about the fireside chats. And before I knew anything about politics, and none of that even matters, I just thought, what a really novel idea for a leader of the country to really sit down and instead of just having some scripted, here's what we're going through, having someone say, look, I'm sitting here with you. Maybe I'm by a fire or maybe you're by a fire or whatever else, but I'm sitting here with you. I'm in this uncertainty. I don't know what's going on either. And I'm walking alongside with you. I just felt like that was really moving to me, even, at a young age reading about it. And so I don't know, for some reason, I just thought, what if we can meet people where they're at right now and be a little FDR.
I like it. I'm always down with the FDR.
FDR is not an adjective.
It is now. It is now. You can be down with the FDR.
So anyway, how we usually start the fireside chats are, Ethan, tell us how you've been feeling during all this. And Ethan and I were together the weekend before all this kind of fell apart. At OCD Gamechangers was the last time we were with everybody and we could hug each other and be in the company of other people without feeling all of this uncertainty. And so, how have you been feeling since all this has started?
Yeah, it's been interesting. First of all, hi Haley, we love you too. And hey Mike, good to see you. So that's a great question. I think I've been hosting. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me. First of all, to Christy and OCD Gamechangers. I'm honestly super excited because for those may know or not know, I've been hosting a lot of town halls, so I haven't really, been able to just talk, so to speak, other than my own live stream about how I've been feeling. So I appreciate having me. I've been good. Overall, I think I'm solid. I think that I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety, just like everybody else, a lot of uncertainty and having to call on skills and tools. Every day is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I believe that I'm harder on myself than I need to be. And if I really take a look at the overall picture of what I'm going through and how I'm maintaining and continuing to advocate and work, I feel like I'm doing a pretty solid job considering everything that's going on. For me, my coping mechanism, like you said, was these fireside chats have kept you, sane for the most part. I know for me, diving like really heavily into advocacy and talking to a lot of people and answering emails and doing live streams has really been my saving grace. Just connecting with people. For me, work is not happening right now. Work is kind of on hold in the film industry. And so like I've been able to dive in advocacy head first. And the other benefit, honestly, is I get to talk with like amazing people, amazingly strong advocates and OCD sufferers, and also amazing clinicians. So every day I'm getting new input and new advice on how to cope. But for me personally, there's ups and downs. I always say to people, like, have more good days than bad. I've chunked it down to have more good hours than bad hours. And I try to, bring that to every day. I think there's 4 or 5 times throughout the day where my body goes, what the heck is going on right now? Oh, holy crap, this is real. And I think I have like a little panic attack inside. I don't really have a freak out per se, but I think about 4 or 5 times a day, maybe things don't feel so real. I get a little disassociated. Like, is this real life right now? Or can we not go outside and hang out with people? And then I bring it back to the present moment and like go about my life. But I definitely have these moments of like, WTF, what the heck,
Yeah.
But I found, I told you before, I'll just share a quick story and then I'll toss it back over to you. But like, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I'd been really headfirst into advocacy and didn't really leave the house, and was feeling really overwhelmed, and went outside into the backyard and just like heard the birds chirping. Then I just started crying, and it wasn't a frantic, anxious cry. It was more of an emotional release and almost tears of joy, in the sense that for me, just hearing the birds reminded me that there were still normal things happening, that there were still birds and there was still things going on, and not everything was, sort of chaotic and crazy. And I know for a lot of people, they're finding a lot of solace and peace and serenity in nature. And, ever since that sort of aha moment, I've really turned to nature to sort of ground myself and kind of realize that, yes, things are definitely different and a little scary at times, but, that we're still here and things are still happening, and in time this will get better and all things pass. So I have my good days and bad days, but overall I think I'm pretty solid, and I'm super grateful for that. Honestly, I never take it for granted. How are you doing, Chrissy?
Well, I think I was on the phone with you, Morgan. Plot twist: Ethan is a bird.
I just got off the phone with Morgan. This isn't fair. She's already like primed to destroy me.
So how am I doing?
Morgan.
I think that you and I actually were on the phone maybe the day after you felt that way, which was really helpful to me, and just a testament to how much I love you and our friendship, and how we're there for each other when we need to be. As you know, I struggled really bad the first few weeks, and just emotionally up and down, and just kind of that gloom and doom of, I don't know how I'm gonna deal with this. But when I talked to you that day, I remember you saying, I was outside, I heard the birds singing, yada, yada. And I went out that day actually, and it had just snowed, which it just snowed here too, by the way. We got like 10
Oh,
inches yesterday.
amazing.
And and I remember, going on the trail and hearing the snow crunching beneath my feet and hearing the birds, and there's deer all around my house. And when we're inside with our faces stuck in our social media, we forget that life is happening all around us, whether that is human beings going out and socializing in parks or whatever they can or can't do at this point. Like, that doesn't stop the deer, and it doesn't stop the squirrel. And it doesn't stop all the birds coming out. I've heard hummingbirds are going to start making an appearance here in a few weeks. And it's just, I think sometimes being able to connect for us back to, which I think people with OCD are really good at, is being able to connect back to things that can help ground us and help pull us out of the uncertainty when it gets really scary for us. And so I've really been focusing on that as much as I can. And when I find myself back in that emotional whirlwind, it's okay, Chrissy, you got to get outside. You got to go drive. I mean, you drive around in my neighborhood and there's like packs of deer everywhere. And even just being able to stop and watch them and see that they're so unaffected and that they're still living their lives and their survival, whatever. It just brings me back. So thank you for that. And thank you for being my friend.
Thank you for being my friend. We've definitely shared a lot in the last time. And I think a lot of people have noticed. I know that I've been connecting with a lot more people over the past, 3 to 4 weeks, not just text, but I probably had more phone conversations than I've had in years. And, where Facebook chats have happened, I'm now having text conversations with and reconnecting with a lot of people. I think situations like this really remind us and have created this circumstance where we've had to turn to the things that are really important in life, and it's not just put down anything that we enjoy, whether that's, making money or the finer things or vacations or cars, or like those are all appropriate. And I like those things too. But I think when you're like kind of faced with some sort of mortality and things that are going on and you can't leave and you're stuck with your thoughts, you look to coping mechanisms that are really beneficial. And so I think that like a lot, and I was having a conversation with a clinician last night that, she was talking about her Passover Seder and said she had Passover with her family in Brazil, like 22 members of her family that had a Zoom Seder. And she's like, why did it take me 20 years to do this? And it's like, that's a great question. And, the only thing that comes to mind is we're wrapped up in our lives, we're wrapped up in our minutia, we're wrapped up in that rat race of like paying bills and getting things done. And, and now that we've been put in this position, suddenly things that are truly important in life, family, friends, love, helping others, those things have had an opportunity to rise to the surface. And like, if we can tune into those things, those are really the best ways we can cope in this situation right now.
Mm-hmm. So I do want to bring the attention to something you and I talked about last week. We didn't really reconnect on it, but both of us have been busy. Are you worried about what I'm about to say?
Yeah. I a lot of personal things about me, so I have no clue what's coming out. But go ahead. I'm sure everybody will enjoy it. Morgan will hold it against me.
I'm like, by the way, remember when you said this? No.
Do you know about Ethan's birthmark?
There's been a lot of talk, since the Wall Street Journal op-ed came out.
Yeah.
Called "We All Need OCD Now." And you and I talked I think it was like a week and a half ago, just about, community response and how people are feeling about it. And in general, sometimes feeling really helpless about how do we change this dialogue and what really needs to happen. And we need to start, even being kind of dicks about it. Like, but you know what I mean? Like just making a stand in a way that's just like no more tolerance. Sorry for the profanity, but the reality is that from Chrissy's perspective. So I just wanted to address it because I know that we were talking about how COVID is going to impact that trivialization and how, in me, and I think I shared this with John when we were meeting on Friday, for my optimistic perspective, I'm hoping that we will have a community rise of like, okay, this is it. We've dealt with this enough and, been passive and we've tried to correct people and we've been polite. Because all OCD people anywhere are usually people pleasers. We're all like, we don't want to hurt your feelings. Well, now it's time to, we don't care anymore. if we hurt your feelings. And I don't mean that really. I mean, I mean that really, but I know you wouldn't mean that.
Yeah, no. We're go ahead. Keep digging.
Here's the shovel, Chrissy. So anyway, I just wanted to get your response because, and maybe we can just open up some dialogue, from an advocate perspective and just from two people, you and I, that come at things pretty differently, just like with like a lot of the fire and anger over here. And you're just, you're way more PC than I am in general, which I so appreciate.
Oh, see that? Oh.
In a good way.
No, I said F. It was a joke. I didn't even curse. I was being PC. It was like, never mind. Go ahead.
Okay, I get it. So, Ethan, what can we do? What are we going to do? Let's figure this out right now.
First of all, I don't want to be PC. We're on satellite radio. We're on Chrissy's show. This is, I don't have to be PC on this. All hats are coming off. So, there was a trend with COVID, just from my experience and talking with so many people, experts and sufferers alike and non-sufferers in the last 5 weeks, right? Where when COVID first hit, suddenly people experienced all this anxiety around the disease, right? And protecting themselves and what they needed to do, and see people hyper aware of what they touched and if they touched their face and what if they touched their face and I need to wash my hands. And suddenly it became this really interesting moment where the non-OCD population got a real glimpse into some of what we go through suffering with OCD, what the fear is like, what the anxiety is like, what even the thought process is like. I don't personally have germ related symptomatology, but I know that for me, I would hand sanitize and then touch a chip and then be like, wait, did I sanitize that little tip of my finger? Did I miss that? Germs are very small. And so like you have the population sort of going through these cycles of thought that are very similar to what those of us with OCD go through. So I think at the beginning, it seemed like a really interesting opportunity to educate the public as to what OCD is really like and to give them, almost because they're experiencing a pseudo firsthand account. They're not developing OCD for the most part. That's what they're experiencing is not OCD. Okay, very clear. I'm not saying people with COVID, that are compulsively watching have OCD. I'm simply saying that experiencing the anxiety around whether or not you're going to contract COVID and the compulsions you engage in to protect yourself are similar. So at first there seemed to be an opportunity, but suddenly as it was arcing and there was a real opportunity to gain understanding between OCD and non-OCD population, there was this shift, which was your WSJ article. Suddenly it went from, we need OCD. OCD is the savior. OCD can help everyone. OCD, oh my God, if only I could be a hand washer and if I could only be a germaphobe and that will protect me. And that's when the dialogue took a really nasty turn. Obviously for the OCD community, for OCD sufferers, for the public at large that already thinks they're so OCD, it kind of went from OCD being a cool quirk, which is wrong. It's not an adjective, to, OCD being the salvation of mankind, amidst the pandemic. And that's a major problem, right? And I'll just give a personal story real quick, and then I'll pass it over to you because I think we should talk about solutions. But I was on the phone with a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends in Los Angeles, and he called me, and he knows what I do. He knows that I speak and I advocate, and he's like, "Oh my God, Ethan, you'd be so proud of me, man. Like Jen and I." That's his wife. I hope he's not watching. Whatever. Anybody that knows anybody that's married to a Jen, chances are it could be you. But anyway, so he's like, me and my wife. I know, but whatever. He's like, me and my wife have like really tried to channel you, Ethan, and channel your OCD. So we can we wash our hands all the time and we stay 10 feet away from everything and we're super neurotic and we feel comfortable that that's going to protect us. And I'm thinking to myself, why is one of my closest friends stigmatizing the crap out of me right now? Now I know where he's coming from, but if I thought about that, he legitimately believes that he's complimenting me. He wasn't coming from a place of I want to hurt Ethan. He was like, man, I respect that you're OCD so much that I want to be OCD too. So like I have a chance of surviving this thing. And I was kind of like, do I address this with them? Do I not address this with them? Is it even worth addressing with them? And so, but it gave me some insight into, whether or not people are approaching this from a malicious place or people are approaching this from a genuine belief that this is what OCD is, and this OCD can protect me from COVID-19. And I feel like that's where most people are coming from. What do you think?
Well, I love the fact that you use the arc and the curve, because I think that is going to work to our advantage. Even though maybe that curve is going down and everybody's getting a little bit more normalized in this new world, to jump the gun on something and start to try to campaign or advocate for something too early during this is going to be an issue, because people are still going to want, they're still going to want to engage in behaviors, and basically, it's going to be background noise to people, I think. And so I think it really is going to be, when is the right time to address this, when people still aren't in panic mode, aren't in, well, I have to do this or else, and if I need to be a little OCD, then so be it. I think it's helpful to talk about ways that you can address people. Like, there are advocates that are going to just call people out and when they're saying it. Allegra Castens is one of them. Love her. She is just like the best ever at just like throwing it down when people say stuff. I'll say stuff, lots of people will say stuff and just counter people immediately. But in the general everyday, and this is my plea to people when we put our article out recently about this very topic. My plea is, it is okay to start a conversation with people when they're using the term incorrectly. But I think what happens, Ethan, is that people are afraid of the general response back. And I think that COVID is going to give us an amazing opportunity to not only engage someone in their real experience, which would be, so you went through COVID, so you know what it feels like to need to do things, or there would be really big consequences that may seem irrational, but could possibly happen. But with that said, and then there's the pitch. So go ahead.
No, I think Mike hit it on the head, and it's something I know that we're working on at the foundation with hitting. We're about to create some videos around, but he said right here, I'd say contamination, OCD behaviors, and protocol-driven sanitizing are similar, only in form, not function. And that term function is really, really important to differentiate between. OCD is not functional. Compulsions are not functional tools, right? They are compulsions that create a ton of anxiety and a ton of distress for OCD sufferers. And I think it's important to make the realization that, OCD is not a functional tool against COVID-19, just because those with contamination OCD wash their hands or are super hyper vigilant about germs or sanitizing, right? So I think Mike hit it on the head with the terms of what is functional, what are functional tools and what aren't functional tools. And I said this in an article that was published in The Hill recently, which was, we have to be very, very clear that at least within the OCD community, I've seen people that don't normally deal with contamination and germs actually thriving quite well, because those that have been treated, right, that have had exposure response prevention therapy already have skills and tools to deal with uncertainty and understand what they can control and what they can't control, and understand that anxiety isn't dangerous. And I think that I think it's very, very important to acknowledge that it's not the OCD that makes the OCD community be able to manage this better. It's the therapy and it's the treatment that makes the OCD community be able to manage this better. And as long as we can keep hitting that home, there's nothing about the disorder that makes us better equipped. We don't wash our hands better than everybody else. We don't sanitize better than everybody else. We don't put on gloves better than anybody else. We don't want to do the compulsions. Right. Compulsions suck. You don't want compulsions. We don't want to, like, hey, here's some compulsions. That's what that'll protect you. Right. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very, very important to hit home this understanding that if anything, gives the OCD community an advantage in coping during the situation. It's the treatment, not the disorder.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that another issue that's come up, especially, when I meet with clients, it's more so good because my advocacy really does focus heavily on sexual, violent, blasphemous, puro stuff. When, a lot of what other people are feeling, if the stigma is around that kind of talk from people about this, is that it's really, again, driving home that OCD is all about contamination and germs. And so we're, not what people feel is now all of a sudden it's, well, here we go again. It's so misunderstood. There's such a high percentage of people who struggle with intrusive thoughts of, taboo nature or real life stuff, but then have mental rituals that go along with it. And so here we are again, just looking at OCD and how are we going to rise above the ashes out of this, still being able to have people feel part of that OCD community when we feel like we're being bum rushed with like contamination. So, and OCD is such a great thing because of COVID or whatever. So I know a lot of the community feels really frustrated about that. Again, that part of that manifestation of OCD is just totally getting thrown under the bus, totally feeling like we are the dirty uncles of the OCD world, which is kind of how it feels. No pun intended, like cleanliness, dirty uncles. Anyway,
You missed my joke earlier. I'm just paying you back. I think you're spot on, and I think that if we really look at the trajectory of OCD stigma in media in the past 10 years, where we are now makes total sense because the media and the public, the uninformed public, always assumed that OCD was hand washing, cleanliness, neatness, and checking, right? So now we have this situation where people are being asked to do that, and so they thought that's what OCD was before, and so now it's like, well, yeah, it's still OCD, but now we all need it. So it makes it's unfortunate, it's wrong, but it makes sense in terms of like logic and thought as to where we'd head based on this COVID. I think that you're absolutely correct. I think that for anyone suffering and struggling with any other type of subtype or any other type of manifestation, I think two things are happening. I think there's so much attention going on with contamination and so much attention going on with germs that even inside the OCD community, I feel like they're feeling neglected because we've spent a lot of time really educating around what's compulsion and what isn't compulsion in terms of just listening to CDC and WHO guidelines. And so, we put a lot of focus and attention on that, but there's still tons of people that are dealing with, violent and sexual intrusive thoughts, or, what if I hurt my people are, quarantined with family and they've got OCD about what if I kill a family member? Now they're around them 24/7. I know tons of people that, have to eat certain foods for their OCD and now they can't get those. So like they're experiencing a lot of anxiety around, well, I can't get my brand that makes me feel safe. Virtual learning for kids has created a whole nother level of different OCD symptomatology, worrying about if I earn these grades because virtual learning is easier, or maybe it's harder for me and I'm getting worse grades. And if it just hadn't been this way, I would have gotten there's so much going on outside of contamination and germs. So I think it's, definitely our due diligence to make sure that we address everybody's needs and concerns regarding what your OCD symptomatology is. And I think we're fighting multiple fires right now. We're fighting the fire of the OCD public and how they perceive OCD. We're fighting the fire of the media and how they perceive OCD. I haven't seen one article around OCD yet that didn't use a picture of hand washing, including mine. Every article is the same stock image of somebody washing their hands.
Oh, it just pisses me off.
And it's not invalidating contamination, but that is not all OCD is.
That's not even like a majority of what OCD is.
No, it's not. So I think we're fighting the public. I think we're fighting the media, and then we have to help our own community, including ourselves, better understand this process and educate everyone. So I feel like this is a multi-headed monster. And I think all of us in our own communities and our own advocacy roles are doing the best we can to offer virtual support and conversations about all of this in an effort to kind of, attack the monster at all the heads. And it's a process. I do think that COVID-19 has created, a laser-like focus on OCD. We may not like the conversation at the moment, but it is creating an opportunity to have more conversation about OCD than frankly ever before.
Well, and I think that just to reemphasize what I was saying earlier, it is going to depend on that curve you were talking about. When is the right time and when will we know the right time? And that's why I think it's so important for communities to band together in an effort to be able to just kind of really have a unified stance about this, because we can't have like this part of the community, meaning like contamination part of the community with, all the other stuff going on here and this and that and this and that, saying all these different things. Whereas a community, we have to come together and just say, here's how things are going to be moving forward. And as optimistic as that sounds and maybe far-fetched, I think it can happen. It really can. Like, this has changed the course of how we live. It has, and it's going to, like, masks are now going to be part of our everyday life. And even when all the shit lifts, it's going to be. And so that's also going to create, more of a dialogue around it. But when is the perfect time for us to have a united front and say, okay, so this is how we want people to perceive OCD moving forward. And here's how we can evoke people's empathy about what we go through on a daily basis.
I agree. I have nothing to add to that. I totally agree with you. I'm actually, I hope that we don't have to wear masks all the time. If we do, then I don't have to worry about shaving. That's cool. Just looking.
I just mean, after this, it is the world as we know it has changed, as much as I don't want to believe that. And as much as a way, like, I'm not going to wear masks for the rest of my life, but people will. And that is the way it is in a lot of countries. So it's not like it's that far fetched, I guess, but, this is how it's going. Things are not going to be the same. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard reality to face, I think. And I think that in particular, and I was going to ask you actually about this anyway, is when big changes happen, that can impact people who live with OCD. It can impact symptoms. It can impact whether or not we're going to lapse, with symptoms, or, I hear a lot right now and have experienced the same in my own life of, even with this big change, if you're not impacted, I'm not impacted all that much. I still work from home. I still do my routine things. I'm social distancer anyway in real life because of vomit. But
I'll leave that between us, but yes.
But in general, the emotional side has impacted me, and a lot of people have said that old themes are starting to resurface, even just with the changes, even just knowing things are so different outside. And so, just from your perspective, how has that impacted you through this, or, just your OCD in general, or if you look at moving forward, how life is going to look like because things are a little bit different, or a lot different?
It's a great question. I think there's two answers, and there's also one thing I want to back up on, which is, I agree with you. We have to band together as a community, and I also think that there's room for lots of different approaches to attack the same problem, because I think that different people hear different things, and so I think there's room for a lot of organizations and groups and people and social media accounts to address things in a different way, because I think that different people resonate to different responses. And so, I think we all have the common goal of destigmatizing and educating and creating a more understanding world for those of us with OCD and related disorders, and helping the public understand, what OCD is and how to talk about it and not talk about it. It really is, in the vernacular, it's discussed unlike any other disease or disorder in the world. Nobody walks around. Yeah. We've said this. We use it all the time as example, but how many times have you heard somebody that's forgetful go, "Oh my God, I'm so Alzheimer's today." Nobody says it. I'm so cancer. I'm so whatever it is. For some reason, whether it's TV, media, entertainment, for some reason, OCD has been pigeonholed in this position, and so I like the idea that there's different voices at different levels with different attitudes talking about different things, because I think it's important. I think it's important to get attention. I think everybody should be able to express themselves in their own way, on their own playing field, and with their own passion. So that's what I'll say about the community as a whole. In terms of old themes, personally, I haven't experienced old themes come up for me in regards to this. Well, no, that's not true. That's a total lie. In fact, no, I'm just thinking about.
No one would have even known if it was a lie. You just admitted the
no,
lie.
I'm just trying to be honest. No. I want people to know that I lie to them all the time, and it's important.
Confession.
Yeah, no, I've talked about it on a couple other streams. No, I have noticed that, like, obviously a slight uptick in my health anxiety. I took my temperature for 15 years. I've talked about that 1,000 times. I took it 100 times a day. I carried multiple thermometers with me. There have been times in the past month where I would love to take my temperature. I feel like somebody who quit smoking. I'm like, oh man, just one temperature, just one thermometer, one time, like a pipe or something. And I haven't done it, but I have noticed, like, perfect example. I was doing the stream on Sunday, the Saturday town hall, and I started getting really hot, flushed face. And if you watch the video back, I do this a few times, and it's subtle, but I'm like, do I have a fever? Is COVID here? Is it striking now? Like, why? And so, like, it's so small for me. I don't latch onto it. It's not too sticky. I notice these small things, and they pop up and then they disappear. I don't know that I would call that like a resurgence in my health anxiety theme. I like to call them little OCD attacks or whatever. But I think it's also really, really important to break down and identify the difference between a spike in old themes and a spike in OCD. Because I think a spike in thoughts, just the obsessions, is totally, well, it's all completely normal. It's all related to OCD. But a spike in OCD thoughts is not a relapse, and it's not a relapse in themes. We're having 40 to 60,000 thoughts a day. I'm quoting other therapists in the last week. These are not my own ideas. They just make me sound smart. I'm stealing everybody's best material. But we have ridiculous amount of thoughts a day. We can't control them. So I think, old themes popping up in thoughts is completely normal and natural. And there have been plenty of times over the last 10 years, not COVID-19 related, where suddenly I started having thoughts of old OCD thoughts that I hadn't had in a gazillion years.
Yeah.
So I think acknowledging the fact that can happen, and that can happen all day, every day, or that can happen screaming, or that can happen softly or whisper, that I think is a completely natural and normal part of OCD. But it's also important to differentiate the difference between OCD thoughts coming back up and an actual relapse in old themes, right? So the relapse is dependent on compulsions, and we know that. So I think we have to ask ourselves, like, resurgence in old themes, is it resurgence just in the thoughts, but we're still resisting compulsions and not engaging them? Or we are legitimately having a resurgence of old themes and engaging in OCD behavior?
Right. I agree with that. And I think that my feelings about relapse have changed through the years. And a lot of it is just based on my own lived experience of if I really did look at some as old themes resurfacing or engaging in compulsions or having the choice, then that means I'm relapsing every day. And I just choose to believe that that's not the case. I really have had to look at that is, no, this is my life with OCD. And so whether or not I'm relapsing is whether or not I'm choosing to engage in the compulsions and then going down the rabbit hole and getting into a space where things just feel hopeless. So yeah, I agree. For me, is there an echo?
Echo.
I feel like I can hear my voice. I just want to make sure it's not coming through on the
I can hear your voice. No, you're good.
I'll talk quieter. Anyway, so for me, I think what?
There was just an opportunity to say that we have on record you saying you'll talk quieter. So it's recorded.
I'm going to go back and erase that.
Yeah.
For me, it has been less about the resurgence of themes, is that the correct word? Yeah. And more about, because of what's going on the outside and how much things are different and changing, and that there's no finish line. I can't say to myself, okay, things are going to be all back to normal on May 1st or June 1st. And that's where I tend to feel, to me, it's almost like the walls are closing in. And then it's like, okay, then everything feels on fire. And so anything that happens in my life all of a sudden turns into a huge spike. And I keep trying to remind myself, this is just unprecedented times. Like normally I would be able to go this and that. But when you walk out into a world, and the world is vastly different than it was a month ago. a month or a month and a half ago. Things feel different when we experience them because there's just no way of escape. That's what I wanted to say. When distraction and that escape is taken away. And now while we can escape and we can distract, it's very different than it used to be, whether that's healthy or unhealthy distraction. If I, feel isolated or something's happened to me and I feel like OC isn't closing in, one way that I would feel normal would be I'm going to go get sushi. I'm going to sit at the sushi bar.
I miss sushi. Oh my God.
We got takeout and it just was not the same.
I have to say, not to interrupt you because you're on I was thinking about starting a business called Quarantine Buddies. So like if there's a resurgence later, you can go online and pick who you want to be quarantined with. Because I was thinking I would kill for a massage and sushi and a haircut. So like if I just pick like hairstylist, sushi chef, massage therapist, and like that's who I'm going to be quarantined with for 3 months. And like I'll pay a monthly fee and they're going to live with me and I get sushi and massages all day long. I think it's a good business idea. Go ahead.
Like the most privileged thing I've ever heard come through Fireside.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just saying.
Anyway, but thank you for the idea. Now someone's going to steal it and you're going to be pissed. Kind of like one time when I was younger, I remember thinking how cool it would be if you could put wipers on the front of cars.
Oh, no, your headlights.
And then I saw that Mercedes came out with it. You remember that? Like that model. And I was like, I had that idea first when I was like 10, by the way. But anyway, what I was saying is, I don't even remember. Oh, sushi. But at some point, there just were more options. Where now the options are limited. If I want to go out to a restaurant, I have to get takeout now, which means I'm sitting in my car or I bring it back to my house. And I'm not in a restaurant around people where I can watch life going on around me. And that becomes scary. And that becomes isolating to a point where I think I can't say we, but I would say I would dive back into symptoms. And so I'm battling that the most, I would guess, with OCD is that when anything happens, because I'm stuck within the confines of the walls, even if a month and a half ago, I would have dealt with it in the confines of my house. It doesn't matter because there's no escape.
That makes sense. I think there's a lot of things that we have to do as OCD sufferers. I think that I relate to a lot of what you're saying, number one. Number two, I also think it's important to, without overanalyzing and constantly being introspective, I think it's important to recognize what isn't OCD during this time. That we are by far not the only ones suffering and experiencing anxiety and being uncomfortable and having intense thoughts and scary thoughts and catastrophic thinking and all that stuff, right? I think most of the country is, most of the world is. And so I think it's important to recognize, that it's not all OCD all the time. It's, we're having normal life experience and life feelings and life emotions too. And I think that's really, really important to make that connection. I also think that, and I don't come from a place of, I don't say any of this stuff lightly. Again, I'm just stealing it from other therapists that I talk to. So it's all struggle for me as well. It's not, but I think, creating a new normal is really hard. Staying flexible is really hard. It's all about flexibility. Routines are disrupted. All our coping mechanisms, which if it involved leaving or going outside or watching people or, all that shifted. And so it's like, how can we be flexible? How can we create new routines? How can we create new coping mechanisms that are, constructive and not destructive? Which, I engage in both. I think we all do. We have to Kim Quinlan, who we both absolutely adore, constantly talks about like strive to be minus. Strive to be a B minus. This process is gonna be messy. And I think we have to be willing to be messy in this. We're in unprecedented times, and we have to manage it. There's no playbook for any of us. We're all in unique circumstances. There's not a one size fits all approach to how to manage this. As much of those of us with OCD and frankly, those that don't have OCD would love a top 10 list of things you can do to not get COVID and have your life. We would love that. We're dying for that. But guess what? It doesn't exist, right? So I think we all are doing the best we can under the circumstances and we might have to fight a little bit harder. I know for me, like, at first, I was stigmatizing myself a little bit in the beginning because I was like, man, I have to work a little harder to get up in the mornings. I have to work a little harder to get going or want to work, and as these days sort of blend into one another and I'm not sure what day it is and it's getting a little bit harder to get up in the mornings, like, I have to remember that, like, line has changed. Oh, it's not the playing field is completely different now for everybody. And I think everybody is experiencing, that level of see, I just went, oh my God, I touched my face. Did I wash my hand? Like, the thoughts are there, like I literally rubbed my eye just now. I went under the glasses. Don't go under the glasses. They protect you. If I really pay attention to my thoughts, I'm having all the OCD thoughts that accompany. But we're still going to have this conversation and I'll let that anxiety pass. But no, I really think it's about, as difficult as it is, it's about, being willing to be flexible. I think as human beings, we get in our head the way we want it, and we're going to stick to that way no matter what. It's like, planned on it. This is how I'm going to do it. I know, and there's actually some psychological terms that I don't remember what they were, but basically, like, if I were planning a camping trip for 2 years and I'd bought everything and I'd planned everything and I'd spent all the money, and then, like, the weather came in that there was going to be a new ice age, I would probably still, like, no, I'm going on this camping trip because I planned it and that's just the way it is, and we're the only animals that act this way. When a dog is outside playing and it starts to rain, that dog goes inside, everybody adjusts to the external forces, but we just, at the top of the food chain go, nope, this is what I planned on. So I don't care. This is what I'm going to do.
It's so true.
Yeah. And so that's why flexibility is so hard. And like Mike said, hi, Mike, good to see you. Mike, flexibility is the opposite of OCD. But I think, so flexibility, OCD loves to be rigid, right? We're not going to be flexible. We talk about flexibility in terms of managing OCD, but even more so than managing OCD, flexibility is like one of the keys to managing right now in our circumstances. How can we be flexible in this moment? I don't have all the answers. I just say that to myself and then wonder, how do I be flexible in this moment? And then I get into bed and take a nap. But I think that, I think trying to create some semblance, and also we talk about grief and mourning what we had and, like, processing what we used to have. And that's a big thing too. I know that you talk a lot about grief and
grief. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also I love that. That's amazing, because I am just like that. If I have a camping trip planned, I don't care. I'm going. You know me well enough to know that. Almost to the extreme, just to be defiant.
Yeah. Well, like 3 weeks ago, you were like, I'm going to lick doorknobs at the grocery store. I don't care about this COVID. And I was like, Chrissy, that's not a good idea.
Don't
and I was
tell anybody that.
All right, sorry.
No, I would never lick doorknobs. I'm still too, but I have it's so interesting how much I've relaxed my compulsions just out of defiance. Because normally, like, when the whole world is going on and on, I'm always like, well, the not the coronavirus, the neurovirus could be it could be lurking anywhere, which I'm deathly afraid of. But now it's just like, well, it's the coronavirus, and everybody is, everybody's I had to give my cart to someone and they wipe the cart down. So I'm like, well, whatever, then I'll just eat this thing off the floor. I would never, but you know what I mean? Like, it's almost the defiant piece of it. I will say, and then I'll get your final thoughts. Another thing that I've heard from people, and another thing, and probably what I feel too, is that, this is going to be hard for me to say, because it's going to sound like that I don't care about coronavirus or COVID, and that's not how I want it to come across. But one of the things I've talked to a lot of my clients about, and I experienced too, is that we have done so much work over the years after surviving the thoughts in our heads that have just told us that if we don't do this, then the end of the world is coming, or this horrible, and just the amount of suffering that we've had, then plus doing the work to be able to move past that, right? And then to get to this place, there's a lot of people I talk to they have a lot of resentment. And a lot of that it's not because people are dying from this, because that's sad, but it's because it feels so invalidating, the stuff that maybe we have gone through and had to work through on our own and felt like this tremendous shame about and all this. And now we're in this space where where, yeah, it does feel like, okay, if you don't wash your hands 10 times a day, you're going to kill someone. And it's just this whole, that's what it feels like. Just like, give me a break. Like, I've already been through this. I've already, and it's the resentment that people are feeling. And I identify with it. And I don't really have a lot to say about it right now because I'm still kind of working through that emotion. But just this feeling of, I lived for so long in this guise of a bubble that if the bubble burst out, it was all going to be over because outside of it was, liquid death or whatever. And then now having to be put in this place where we have done so much work and now we're living in it and it's out of our control, and even not doing compulsions doesn't help. Is any of this making sense?
Somewhat, yeah. I was actually going to ask you if you resented the current. You
It's
answered that.
It's the resentment. It's this feeling of, and I can't speak for the people that I meet with, but I would just say, like, on my own, I've started to feel this a lot in the last probably week or week and a half, and I can't identify it yet. And typically if I have a strong emotion like that, I have to just let it be until I understand the reasoning. But I'm starting to see it a lot. And I'm starting to get emails about it a lot too from people. So I tend to think, okay, good. Then I'm not the only one feeling this way. So I just wanted to bring that up in case we have people watching, to say, if you're having those feelings, and I've had them, and then I feel guilty for having them. Because it's like, well, I can't feel resentful because people are dying and this is serious and yada, yada, yada. But I also can't help what I feel. And there's a reason down there for it. And to me, I'm starting to see that it's also other people experiencing it. So that helps validate me. So I wanted to just say that out loud of, like, if you're feeling resentful, and especially about what you've been through, and now to feel like you're thrown into the mix of it, and the world is now taking it seriously, where things that you experienced were, well, just don't do them and take the risk. You know what I mean? Not that sorry, I'm getting into this kind of deep, but like, not that when we got therapy, that our therapist did not take it seriously. But there is, with ERP, as you know, this very much, well, you have to take the risk and live with the uncertainty. Maybe you're a pedophile, or maybe you have AIDS, or maybe you have this, or maybe you have that, and just deal with it. It's not passive or blasé, but we worked through that. We had to accept that uncertainty. And now to kind of be thrown into the mix and in an environment where it's just like, if you don't do it, you're a horrible human and shame on you. It's created a lot of pain and suffering for people. Does that make sense?
Go in deeper to, if you don't do it. If you don't do what like the CDC and WHO guidelines are saying to do?
Yes. Well, like, no, and not even just that, but just in general. I mean, over here, like, if you get on Nextdoor app in my neighborhood, like, you are Satan if you don't wear a mask when you go. Even though it's not like mandatory, but like, you are Satan. And so I think what it is it becomes it's just becomes some hardened resentment of, like, I've done this work, I've done this and that, and now here I am in a reality situation where I know how to deal with this already. But if I don't do it, all of a sudden it really truly is this, you should feel shame. You should feel bad.
There's definitely a ton of shaming going on. Absolutely. We see it online on Facebook. People are handling it in different ways the best they can, and everybody's shaming everybody for not handling it their way. My question to you is, and I want to better understand what you're talking about, and I think I have an understanding, but because I'm trying to connect what you're talking about, like, if you're not wearing a mask, you're being shamed, and how that connects to the OCD. So like, for instance, I've been talking to a lot of teenagers or even young adults that live at home, right? And the young adults are, because they've had treatment and therapy, they're following the CDC and WHO guidelines, and at 20 seconds, they're stopping, right? And then they have family members that are saying, you need to wash your hands for a minute. And they're like, I can't do that for me because that's going to bring me to places mentally that I don't want to go. So this is where I need to draw the line. And so there's a lot of shaming going on between what non-OCD sufferers think are the healthy boundaries for this, and what OCD sufferers that have had treatment are trying to maintain. And there's a lot of bumping heads. Is that
That's
what you're
I'm talking about?
Okay.
That's what I'm talking. I'm sorry. I know I just like rambled around it.
No. I appreciate it. I just was trying to understand
I
before
actually
I weighed
started
in.
talking about it and then went, I think that I don't have a clear enough like feeling in my head to be able to explain it. But I think that that's part of it. I may need to just think some more, not today, but just in general about how to rephrase it. But yes, that's it. And I think it's not resentment in a way of like, I hate the world and I hate everybody, but just almost in reflection of people's experiences and then now seeing it on display
Yeah.
and just and almost, I guess in a way that the easiest way I could describe it is in my experience, I went through effing hell and back by myself in my head without anybody knowing, with as much grace as I could, like without shaming people around me, without, trying to deflect this on everybody else as it being, if you don't do this, then this. And then, and the amount of work. And then now here's our world. And it's just an internal experience, I think, for people coming to terms with the world seems very, I don't want to say this trivializing, but the world seems like it is like OCD on crack for people. When we all know this is going to pass and people aren't going to continue those behaviors, not like us who deal with this for the rest of our lives. But in the process of how we handled it or went through challenging therapy and learning how to and practice and relapse and depression and things like that, finally getting to a space where now all of a sudden it feels like I can't even live my effing life right now to the best of my ability because of all this stuff going on over here. I don't know. I totally just rambled through that whole thing. It just felt important to talk about it then, and I don't even have.
I appreciate it. We're having one of our usual phone calls just in front of people. I like it. And
for a minute, I was like, "Are we live or am I on with Ethan?"
No. No, I don't listen this well when we're not live. I've interrupted you 5 times by now on the phone. I think that I'll say it. I think there's a bunch of opinionated assholes out there, that whether they're operating from malice or operating from their own fear, makes people feel better to shame other people. Social media has tons of it right now,
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to survive the best they can. And, I've posts like, my effing neighbors are out front saying 6 feet apart and having dinner. Why aren't they inside? What the hell's wrong with them? And then like everybody, and it's like, I get it. I get that. But the reality is everybody wants everyone else to follow what they deem is safe and healthy right now. And listen, I'm going through that with my family. I'm quarantined with my parents right now. I'm quarantined with my parents.
Send the secret signal.
I know. I'd like hold up a sign like I'm happy, but no, I'm quarantined with my parents right now. And I'm grateful for that on many ways, but like we have very different ideas of what's safe right now. And like my parents are like, we're going to the grocery store every day because we want this for dinner. And don't worry, we'll put on masks and gloves. I'm like, don't go outside, And so like I find myself
shopping.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna watch this at some point. Sorry, Mom and Dad, for selling you out. It's for the good of the community.
No one knows. Sorry.
No one knows. I'm gonna bring up Jen again and divert the conversation, but I totally understand like this passionate desire for everybody, because everybody, like I feel like, oh, Chrissy, well, you're not doing what I think you should be doing, so you're threatening my life. How dare you threaten my life, right? And I think, and then on top of that, there's this added layer of like, I may not know what you've been through with OCD, so on top of that, I'm going to shame you for not doing whatever action it is I think you're doing, and then on top of that, then that shame is going to seep down into the roots, into the OC, and then reflect everything that you've worked for in the last years. So it's a double layer of shame. Yeah. It's a double
That's
of shame.
That's a great way of putting it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, just from what I'm talking about, for what we're discussing now. And I think that, I think that's very valid. And I think it's valid to let everyone know that's watching too, is that like, from what I understand from your story, and I feel like I know your story pretty well, is you never really dealt with hand washing, correct?
Never. Mm-mm.
So I think it's interesting that, you're feeling shamed around a compulsion that everybody's doing that you didn't have, right? You had sexual,
Yes.
violent, intrusive thoughts, and yet you are still feeling minimized and shamed, even though that wasn't your OCD symptomatology.
Correct.
It's still rubbing you raw, and it's
Mm-hmm.
still needling you. And I think that's important to recognize, is you don't need hand washing. You don't need to have, the exact compulsions or things that people are being asked to do to feel shamed and felt like everything that you've gone through was for nothing or minimized or undermined.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
that speaks volumes. The fact that you're feeling impacted by it is very telling. And something that should be talked about, because clearly, you're not going to be the only one that feels that way.
Yeah.
Whether you had a hand washing problem or it was something completely different.
Yeah. And I definitely, appreciate being able to say it out loud. It was not planned at all by me, but I have been hearing the rumblings of it. And so it just felt important today, especially with somebody like you. I know I can just talk freely and you do get it and help me work through it. I know that when Chris Tronson is going to come on in a couple weeks, and we've already started to address some of it. So it's going to be a continued conversation. Ethan, we'll have you on again to keep talking about it. But
FDR.
We'll get some final words from you, but I just want to just really quickly say final words, even in regards to wrapping up those last few thoughts between Ethan and I. The point is, and always will and remain for me, that wherever you're at and whatever you're feeling right now is okay, because there's no way to know how to feel in something like this. And that may be day to day, or like Ethan said, even hour to hour. And so my point in bringing that up is, I have felt very guilty and shame because I'm not feeling like I think I should be. And as we know, should is a shaming word. And so whatever you're feeling, whatever that is, I do want you to know that you're not alone, and that it's okay to let that feeling be there and maybe even try to explore it, but be very careful about judging yourself for it. Because right now, because this is so unprecedented, and because we're each individually going through this, and then collectively as a society, there's a lot of room in the middle to feel all those not so happy and grateful and silver lining feelings. A lot of resentful or sad or jealous or whatever else, anger, all of that. And so wherever you're at, we hope that these chats are bringing to you some normalization and just some acceptance of that, and know that we're walking alongside you and are probably experiencing the same things. So Ethan, with that, give us some final words.
No, I think that was honestly, beautifully said. And you said much of what I wanted to say. I think that, I think quickly to touch on shame too, I think the other shaming that's going on is not only around what we're doing to protect ourselves, but what we should be doing now with this downtime for those of us that aren't essential workers, right?
Nice.
So there's a lot of shame around, like, well, why are you wasting your time? You should learn 12 languages and build a boat and, and create 7 businesses and learn to disappear and levitate. Like, and the reality is there's no right way to go through this process. I think being productive is great, but I think shaming someone for managing the way they should is and so I think people are shaming for taking this time to find lots of things to do, and you should have every hour planned out. It's like, it's all bullshit. It's like, we have to do ourselves. So I think that you hit it on the head. I think now is not the time to be judgy with ourselves. Now is not the time to be now is the time to be extremely self-compassionate.
Yes.
I know Chrissy will agree with me on this, is neither Chrissy or I, and I don't want to speak for her because she'll beat me up. And I'm also proud that we've talked over an hour and I haven't made a hair joke, which is the longest I've ever gone without making a hair joke.
Thank you for that.
Well, because my hair isn't that great either. I don't want you to throw stuff back at me. But I think that it's important to understand that nobody is saying not to fight your OCD. This isn't a time to let up on OCD. I think, again, I will quote quote Kim Quinlan, because she always, everything she says I love, and I'll always want to give her credit, is that, she kind of comes from this place right now where the exposure is life. We don't necessarily need to overexpose ourselves and make ourselves totally nuts. Really, this time is about the response and the prevention. So nobody's saying, don't fight your OCD. This is a time to go easy on it, engage in compulsions. but it is a time to be willing to be messy. It is a time to be willing to be a B- and not an A+. It is a time to be willing to, give yourself credit for the small wins, not beat yourself up for the mistakes, and, approach each day with the desire to approach it positively and healthily, and fighting your OCD and being the best person you can, but to grant yourself grace if your day doesn't go that way, to grant yourself grace if you spend your day feeling like crap or sad or in bed. Again, this is unprecedented times. And I think, we all have opportunities to manage it in healthy ways, but it doesn't mean that we're going to manage every minute of every day in healthy ways. So we have to grant ourselves flexibility, as we talk about, but grant ourselves flexibility to manage it in a way that is ultimately healthy. And finally, the last thing I'll just say is, like, be willing to feel the feels, because we're not going to feel that great right now. If we do, that's gravy on top. If you have a great day where you feel great, but just separating like what you do from how you feel doesn't have to dictate what you do. Chrissy and I talk all the time. I'm constantly proud of her. And I'm not saying that from a place of like, I have my shit together. I'm just saying that, like, she has businesses, she advocates, she's, regardless of how she's feeling, she manages to do it anyway. And I think that there's an amazing lesson for all of us in that, which is, feelings don't dictate actions, right? We all want to feel good while doing something. And unfortunately, like, that is less of a luxury right now. It doesn't mean that you can't, but it's less of a luxury right now. So I would urge all of us, including myself, to be willing to engage in actions and value-driven decisions despite how you feel. Mm-hmm. And also, that'll be a good practice for just dealing with OCD in general. So I just want to thank Chrissy. Chrissy is a dear, one of my closest friends on this planet. She's an amazing advocate and always an inspiration to me on many, many levels, both as a friend, an advocate, a sufferer, and everything in between. She is not, I am not proud of her hair. She does not inspire me on the hair front.
I can't help it right now. I can't do anything. It's getting bigger. I know.
It is. And I'd never actually seen how much hairspray she used until 5 minutes before we went live. It was like 3 bottles of hairspray. She is highly flammable right now. And so
okay, I think it's time to wrap up. Love you too. And I appreciate all you do. And, would love to get you back on too and just talk about advocacy during this time. Because I know as much as it's been awesome for us to engage in it, it's also tiring too.
Very tiring.
And would love to just talk to you about how that is, because a lot of people do want to get into advocacy, so we could have a lot of conversation about that. But thank you, Ethan, for coming on. Thank you for all that you do in the OCD community and for me as a friend. Love you.
Love you too,
and thank you so much for everybody joining today. It has been a blast, and we hope that anything that you can take away from this can help you and where you're at today. And we will continue to show up for you from our entire team and family at OCD Gamechangers. We will be live Friday afternoon. We'll be with Dr. Robert Lancer. He's going to be coming on and doing a fireside chat as well with us. And in the meantime, take care of yourself. Please have some self-love and self-compassion, less judgment, and know that you matter and that you are part of our family as well.
And Google FDR.
You're so
fireside
FDR.
chat.
You're so FDR.
You are so FDR, girl.